on nowadays, because we see all different types of advertisements happening. I mean, whether you're on your web browser or you're on your mobile phone or you're watching your favorite TV show, all you hear about is triple plays and cutting this and this service beats that service. And is it all the same? Michael, welcome, welcome, welcome.
No, Ted, thank you for having me. And it's always my pleasure to sit and talk to some of your people here and give them a little update about what's been going on. Over the past 5 years now, it's been that long, Ted. 5 years ago, you had asked me about trying to save some money on your cable bill. And, I started looking at the ways that people had started developing to watch or view television shows, movies, and the internet had exploded. And it was just an open door for a lot of the companies. And I told you at that time, I said, it's no longer going to be what cable company or what service provider you're with, but how much bandwidth.
You're right. You're right. I think at the time, it was many, many years ago, and I think I was paying about $170 per month just for premium channels. Not talking about internet, not talking about phone service. And I felt like I was being ripped off. It's kind of like that feeling every month when you get that specific bill and you're like, where's the value? What's happening? And I think I came across to you and I mentioned it, and you were mentioning, I think we were at the time, we were talking about BYOD.
Correct.
Bring your own device. But I think you said BYOS, bring your own service.
Exactly. At that time, Hulu, Netflix, Vudu, there are a couple of internet service providers that were just breaking into the market, and they hadn't had a stronger foothold yet. But as you see, what's been happening is a lot of the cable providers, Comcast, for instance, joining with Optimum, Time Warner going out and buying up larger blocks of services. These companies are now starting to realize that they need to leverage the internet more. Before 1995, there was a big problem with the internet was speed, data. We all had these 56K modems, and it was really difficult to stream even basic video.
Correct.
And the game changer there was Adobe Systems. Before it was Adobe, it was actually a company called Macromedia.
Macromedia, I remember.
Macromedia came out with one of the best compression algorithms, which allowed more of a leverage on the internet. And with that leverage, what they did is they actually allowed the web browser to become a means of delivering your audio and video.
Okay. I mean, you're running it back a little bit, because I think around 1995, we were doing phone support.
Pretty much.
Back on, out here, Long Island, doing tech support, speaking with people about, Excel and Word, and we really hadn't touched that part of, there were certain people that had the skills to use a Macromedia suite.
Yeah, well, a lot of us at that time, we were enjoying our Xboxes, and we were throwing our Xboxes online, and we were modifying them.
Right.
Basically, we're updating the code in the Xbox, which allowed us to now get on the internet, and we would do LAN parties where I'd bring my Xbox, you'd bring your Xbox. We have 5 or 6 guys in the same room, and now we're all playing on a single network together.
Gotcha.
Now, after modifying your Xbox a bit, you're able to now stream video and music. The only problem that we had at that time was every website that you would go to had a different format.
Right.
So we're downloading a Flash player, you're downloading Macromedia, you're downloading a 3D player. There were tons of different proprietary software used across the internet. But and nowadays, that's all been changed. There are a lot of companies that use a cross-platform, where even though you are running real networks, my VLC player, which
Right.
is an open source, free to everyone. VLC will now be able to read those file types.
Gotcha.
So as opposed to getting everything so proprietary, it's now it's becoming back to being the wild, wild west, where you have one guy that is sitting inside a covered wagon, and he has a Gatling gun that just takes out everything that comes in the view. And that could be your VLC, that could be your Adobe player, even YouTube nowadays. If you notice that you used to go to YouTube and you'd have to download a plugin
Right.
or download a player every time you switched to a different video. Nowadays, YouTube says, you know what? I'm going to look on your computer. I'm going to see what player you have, and I'm going to stream to that particular player. So the service providers, the content providers, are able to look at your computer or look at your device and decide for you what's the best way to receive their content.
So I don't think you've told our listeners, what is cord cutting?
Well, cord cutting is basically you're choosing the shows, you're choosing the movies, you're choosing the videos that you want. One of my favorite saying, it's dim sum for television. If anyone has ever had dim sum, you go to a Japanese restaurant, and as the trays come around, you pull off exactly what you want. Now with cord cutting, you're not saying, you're going to your provider and you're saying, all right, give me access to the internet. Now from the internet, I'm going to decide what shows that I want. I'm going to decide what videos I want to view. I'm going to decide what movies I want to see. And there are a lot of services that have begun supporting that effort. Most popular is Amazon Prime, and please, no, I don't want to get any rhetoric from people saying that you're advertising Amazon. No,
we're not advertising. I mean, I advertise Audible because I have a deal with them.
Okay.
But we're not advertising Amazon, even though Audible does fall under Amazon.
Well, you know that if you're an Amazon Prime member,
right?
Amazon now gives you the opportunity to stream video.
Correct.
And they have their own video library, along with Hulu, along with Netflix. Now, one of the problems that these companies all have is no one is really in charge of all of the media. You might get a specific library from one source.
Okay.
So you might have to have 2 or 3 different sources where you can get your media from.
I've watched on, I believe it's Recode, and I've seen Jeff Bezos, and whenever Walt Mossberg would ask that question, are you going against Netflix? He was like, no, we're kind of supplementing. We're an addition onto Netflix. So what you're telling me, hold on, because I'm at the point, I'm rewinding back 5 years. I'm paying $150 just for TV service. So now you're telling me I have to go get this service also, along Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime Video?
Correct, depending on what you want to see. The way that I was able to save more than $150 per month was realizing that there were maybe 5 programs that I would religiously watch.
Okay.
Why am I paying for the whole smorgasbord when I just want to taste a little bit of the appetizer?
So I got to stop you. We all love HBO. Everyone's a Game of Thrones fan, correct? Everyone in the world. I mean, well, last week they garnered 8 million, I guess live viewers, and then people also watched it through the Go and the Now app.
Exactly.
So upwards of 23 million people watched it. So you're telling me now I don't have to have HBO along with my DirecTV or Cablevision or Verizon?
Well, no, think about it this way, Ted. You go to your service provider, whether it's Optimum, whether it's Comcast, what have you, and you tell them, I want the basic service. Just bring internet in the house and whatever comes along with that basic package. So you're in the $110 package, and you have internet access.
Okay.
And their basic channels.
Okay.
Now, every one of these companies now, they offer an app.
Okay.
And you'll hear it all the time. Oh, we have an app for that. There's an app. Just download the app. So if you're on Optimum, you download the Optimum app and you put it onto your mobile device. What if you had a device that you can connect to your television, supplementing your cable box? When I'm saying supplementing your cable box, there are tons of Android devices, Amazon Fire Sticks, multiple devices out there that would allow you to connect to the internet in order to stream or to download videos. You don't want to download and save the files for posterity, but what you do want to do is to be able to stream that file in order to watch that particular show.
I'm going to say I have a problem with this because I want someone telling me when my favorite show comes on.
Well, with a lot of these applications, with a lot of these devices, you get a menu, and the menu comes up and says, okay, here goes Game of Thrones season 1. Here goes every single episode. You now, like I said, dim sum, pick the episode that you want to watch. And you're streaming it live. You're streaming that particular episode, and it's on 100 different servers, 100 different places around the world where that file is available.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're talking a little bit about mirroring. We're talking about a lot of stuff here, so I want to just bring it back for a second. So tell me this, because TV as we know it has lived a great life for 50 years. And now what we're seeing is that life, or that traditional, that legacy model is dead. What these millennials are doing nowadays, and I don't want to attach it to the millennials, but with going with an OTT type system, with going with a cord cutter type system, the consumer is dictating what they want to do.
Exactly.
They don't want to be told, hey, your favorite show comes on Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
Well, a lot of times my favorite show comes on Tuesday at 8 o'clock and I'm working, or I'm in traffic, I'm on the way home. So why is it that Cablevision will only show that show at 2 o'clock? And nothing against Cablevision, nothing against all the big service providers, but that model has to change. And our speed of life now, we're always on a mobile device.
Correct.
Either we're on a phone, we're on a pad. We are mobile now. So
correct.
We don't want to be attached to home. You don't want to be attached to a cable in the house when you want to watch your favorite program. You know, a lot of us back in the 80s, we all knew that bootleg DVD guy. we knew that guy that can get you that VHS, you know?
Correct.
And what he would basically do, he would sit at home. When a show comes on, he hit record, and he'd record a particular video. And then he goes and he replicates it 5 or 6, 7, 8 times, and he's on the corner selling them to you for $5. That was his little hustle. That was where his little money was made. And we did the same thing with music, where you'd have one guy who would stay up late night, recording your favorite radio show, making these. Now that's very popular. Now they call them mixtapes.
Right.
Where you get a guy that would do the recording for you, put him onto a cassette, and now he's on the corner hustling off cassettes for $5, $10 a pop.
I just want to let you know this. This is an honorable mention. I remember being younger and listening to Marley Marl and Mr. Magic and Cool DJ Red Alert and making those cassette tapes, because we all used to do it.
Exactly.
I wouldn't go out there on a corner and say, hey, you want to do this? But I mean, I do want to mention this. The fact you brought up a topic, we kind of touched this topic back in late April on our podcast. And now with you bringing it to WGBB, I think it's really, really interesting because cord cutting is at an all-time high. The apps, everything it seems like these legacy companies have even embraced this model now.
They've had no choice. They've come to absorb the model, but it's kicking and streaming.
Yes.
You know, they at first you would hear, and you've seen it yourself, where companies were going after these guys that were running these illegal services.
Okay.
And they called it a service because you had one guy who would download a video and he would post it up on his webpage or on a website.
Okay.
And would allow you access to that website.
Okay.
And he made his money because he had that little PayPal, click here and make a donation. Cable companies, video companies, they all decided, hold on, why is little Jim making this money? Why aren't we doing it?
Right.
So they had to figure out a way to create a model that was going to be acceptable. Hence, I got an app for that. So in order to keep you on board, every industry creates an app. And they're creating an app to push their product. You go to Sears, which is a dime company, which is a relaxing company, by the way. They have an app.
They have an app. Correct.
Walgreens, we have an app.
Right.
CVS, we have an app. They're not making any new products. They're just giving you a new avenue to get their products.
Gotcha.
So this new model that cable is coming along with, and that Netflix is using, and Hulu is using, and Vimeo is using, is we want you to sign up for an annual subscription.
Right.
With this subscription, we're going to give you access to our library. We're going to give you a complimentary resource to your favorite shows. Okay. And Hulu's done a great job with it. It's one of the companies that I really recommend that everyone try it out. Okay. Because they have a smaller library that's for free. Correct. But if you want to watch a show that's been out of date for 6 months or 8 months, Hulu's a good place to get it. Okay. Okay. You know what? Before we get into the big six, before we get into alternatives and talk a little bit about, the hardware models that are out there and finding out about the... And this is Ted Hicks. We're back with Late Night Parents. Happy to have in the studio my good friend Michael Blanco, multimedia extraordinaire. First part of the show, we were talking about, I believe the subject is, are you ready to cut the cord? Wanted to ask Michael, because when we talk about cord cutting, we sit here and, when we're doing channel surfing, it's comprised of about 6 parent companies that everything that you watch is comprised. And Mike was good enough to let me know. I'm going to put it out there to him, the 6 companies that control everything. I mean, so it's 6 big media industry corporations that control the world of music, TV, you name it. All right, well, Ted, I'm going to go over some of the stats that we have here from 1983 only up until 2011. And we only went to 2011 because after 2011, a lot of these companies were being merged. You had Time Warner, as we said, when came across with Optimum. Comcast had started buying up blocks. These companies started merging. So that big 6 that I'm going to give you now has really become down to the mediocre 5. When I say the mediocre 5, it's only because we all now have access to the same programming that these companies provide. Let's start off with GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. Those were the original big 6 back in 1983. GE actually owned large portions of Comcast, NBC, Universal Pictures, and Focus Features. News Corp, which is our Fox News, Wall Street Journal, New York Post. Disney, which is ABC, ESPN, Pixar, Miramax, and now Marvel Studios. Right. Viacom, MTV, Nick Jr., BET, CMT, Paramount Pictures, Time Warner, CNN, HBO, Time, and Warner Brothers. CBS, is our Showtime, Smithsonian, NFL.com, Jeopardy, and now 60 Minutes. So if you notice that with this list, a lot of these companies have now merged.
Right. And I want to jump in there and say, number one, Charter purchased Time Warner.
Correct.
And before we go any further, something you said to me a few months ago, you said, Ted, it's about bandwidth. And you said it again today. It's about bandwidth. And I say that because we used to look at subscribers, of these specific services, and it would be separated in regards to overall subscribers for their internet service. And I see that the shift itself has happened, and it's like day and night. And with so many people caught in the cord, they're losing subscribers on the TV end, but the crown jewel is the internet end.
Exactly. The internet has opened up the door for what I'm considering to be a mass communication. When I say they've opened the door with that, because of video streaming, you notice now a lot of the telephone services have been ported into their digital plans.
Right.
So we're no longer relying totally on what we used to call landlines. So we don't have a Ma Bell that's controlling the communication industry anymore. Our cable companies are all into communications because it's now become voice over IP or VoIP services.
Right.
So if you notice, about 10 years ago, Cablevision was one of the first ones that I realized jumped on board. Yes. And they started offering what we call their triple play.
Correct.
So we're going to give you internet, we're going to give you your video, and now we're going to give you telephone. And that was all leveraged because of bandwidth. The technology has gotten improved. The technology has improved to the point where a single thread the size of a hair can support your video, your audio, and telephone services. Imagine taking something the size of a 1-inch cable. Now you can put millions of subscribers through that same channel. And a lot of it occurred with the advent or the rush to get fiber optics adopted here in the US.
Gotcha. I would tell you, I am one, at my home, internet is about at 150. It's at 150 megs. I'm sure with a check of a checkbox, they could change that to 300 megs.
Oh, easy.
With no problems. And I'm running my own, small business at 300 megs.
Well, with 150, if you go back 5 years, you go back 10 years, 150 was a business class service.
Correct.
So when we first started getting internet at home, it was maybe 2 megabytes per second, 3 megabytes per second if you were really good. And once your neighbors came on, that could drop drastically.
Right.
Now your cable companies are almost guaranteeing that you can get 50 megabytes per second at home. So you've gotten the capability now that a small business had 5 to 10 years ago. So you can actually run your own little server. I've been running my own email services and my own VPN for as long as I've known you, Ted. I mean, it's been a long time that I realized that I could leverage the cable services myself.
I want to stop you right here because I want to talk about a game changer right now. So when I say to you, Google Fiber, what do you say? What do you say? Because it seems like, okay, these services out here, consumers more, everyone's happy with it. Well, they're happy with what they're getting right now. And what they're getting right now is, increased bandwidth, and they're able to pick their specific channels. And of course, the phone, that landline phone, which a lot of people are saying, you know what, the heck with it, I don't need it anymore. But when I say to you Google Fiber, now it's not here in New York, but if we say Google Fiber and we were in Kansas City or North Carolina, or Iowa.
If you're sitting in Vegas, you are smiling with Google Fiber. You just imagine having the same power that your local television company has brought right to your home. The closest thing that we can have right now is Fios.
Yes.
Because the service that they're offering as far as internet right now in the metro area is par none.
Yes.
But myself, I'm now transitioning out of New York in order to get access to Google Fiber. I know that we've discussed it off the air, but I'll be relocating myself into Alabama at some point.
Okay.
And that's high speed. We are going for the fiber.
So you're going for the fiber. I mean, is it like a warning shot that's being fired in the air by Google Fiber against some of these legacy companies now? Understood. I want to say this because I know once I get off the show, I'm going to get a phone call because, yes, Verizon's Fios is one of the sponsors. But what's your thoughts? I mean, it just seems like some of these providers are shaking in their boots because of what Google is putting out there.
Well, the providers are now realizing that they no longer have full control.
Right.
In the old days, and I'm gonna date myself. I used to love as a kid watching Batman series.
Okay.
And the ending of that show made it all worthwhile for me.
Okay.
Tune in next week.
Right.
The same bat time and the same bat channel. So I knew where I was going to be 1 week from that day.
Right.
And the television companies knew where I would be 1 week from that day.
Yes.
We had soaps that we would watch that would only come on once a week.
Right.
And they would know that, well, you know what? Tonight we're going to have 2 million viewers. This is before the Super Bowl. This is before the big turkey events that we have nowadays.
Right.
They could control and manage millions of people at one time. And in my household, there was 11 of us. And we would have 11 kids sitting around a television set watching wrestling.
Okay.
Watching a baseball game. God rest him, Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
He gave us many years of enjoyment.
Okay.
Because when a fight came on, the whole family got together and we would sit around the television. One little 13-inch black and white television, aluminum foil on the aerials, just so that we could watch the shows clearly. And we were all sitting around there watching a show.
We got Brian, the engineer extraordinaire, shaking his head. So he agrees with it, or he remembers this, or
no, but understand, at that point, companies, you had your Dove soap, you had your Ivory Snow, they would sponsor a television show.
Right.
They would sponsor a television show, shows would get produced, and it was better, in my personal opinion, I'm going to get yelled at, but it was better quality television than we have now. It was more family orientated.
Okay.
So, like going back once again with the Father Knows Best series, there was a moral to that show.
Okay.
And that effort was being pushed by products. So you would have a show canceled because they couldn't find what they called a product sponsor.
Okay.
Nowadays, it's anything and everything goes.
Well,
they don't care how their money is being made.
Because it's about the dollar.
Exactly.
It's about the dollar.
Exactly.
Wow. You had me thinking right there. You really had me thinking.
I mean, just if I know a lot of your viewers are probably millennials or probably younger than we are. And I remember the days when the Cross Your Heart bra was being advertised. The young lady could not show the bra unless it was over a turtleneck shirt. So she would never, the things that we're seeing on television now is
big changes.
Big changes.
Big changes.
It's nothing like my, and I'm sounding like my parents now. When I was a kid, and it really was. When I was a kid, things were different. We didn't have access to the volume of material that's available today.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I want to go in there and say, Is the space too crowded? I want to ask you this, but let me frame this question. Years ago, when MASH was having its final show, or, Dynasty was having its final show, or Dallas, when we found out who shot JR, there were, 30, 40, 45 million viewers watching those shows. Nowadays, with cable and all the original programming that's being produced by cable, you go back to the network shows and you might have 13 or 14 million outside of the world, not the World Series, but the Super Bowl.
Right.
Is the space itself too crowded? Because for one, if I'm not a TV person, is there too much content out there for us?
Well, I wouldn't say there's too much content, but the availability of the content. And when I'm saying availability is, once again, I'm an old hat. I remember at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, you get the flag waving and you'd hear a beep all night long.
Right.
And about 5:30, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, you hear, "Hey, this is Jack LaLanne." And Pledge Allegiance would start and television would start all over.
Right.
We don't have that anymore. Now television is 24/7. When is the downtime?
There is no downtime.
Exactly.
There's no downtime.
Exactly.
I mean, you look at it.
You can't digest the amount of television that's available today.
Is that a good or is that a bad thing?
Well, when it's something that's newsworthy, when it's something that's important that the people should know, that could be a good thing. But at some point, we are desensitizing the next generation to anything.
So what you're telling me is the Kardashians isn't something that's good.
Oh, I'm not gonna touch that family. I'm not gonna go there, Ted. Reality TV. I didn't want to know when I was a kid what was going on in my neighbor's house.
Right.
Why do I want to have a camera to do it? And the show for me that really started me to thinking about it's time to change was Real World.
Okay.
Which brought on Big Brother.
Okay.
I don't need to have a camera following kids around in a house. I don't need these Jersey Shore to be considered television, because the reality that they're showing there is watered down, it's diluted, and it's edited to make good television. So or what they call good television.
I want to talk about some hardware modules that are out there, because we've talked about the services. We talked about Hulu, we talked about Netflix, we talked about Amazon, video, we talked about Vudu and Plex. Some the later ones are, lesser known. But let's talk about the hardware models. You got the Roku and you got the Chromecast. But the gorilla in the room, let's talk about it, is the Apple TV. We see it every quarter, or we see it every year in regards to Apple TV. Them producing new content, them looking at music. Not looking at music, creating, purchasing Beats by Dre, and generating creating the Beats One Radio and Apple Music. There's even some talk about them nowadays buying Tidal. So what I want to talk about in that space, your thoughts on Apple TV and what they're doing today with that user experience.
Well, Apple TV is a great, great, great device. Nothing against the same guy that makes the cell phone that many of us have in our pocket.
Right.
Except that it is another avenue that they are going to generate revenue.
Okay.
When you have an Apple device, you're normally stuck, or you're normally drawn to that ecosystem.
Right.
So most of us who have an iPhone will also get the iPad.
Right.
And you're going to be naturally gravitating toward the Apple products.
Okay.
And those of us like myself who are fans of the Android, who are fans of open source, we don't want to be controlled. We don't want to be managed. We don't want to be herded into a particular direction. So we go to an open source route.
Okay.
And there are many Android devices, the Fire Stick being another one that, an Amazon product, which is the software behind it.
Okay.
Is more open source. It's more friendlier to a programmer or to a developer who can go in and modify the capabilities of the device itself. Now, that being said, is all of us can go out and buy a car.
Right.
But not many of us can go out, buy a car, raise a hood, tweak it out a bit, and get better performance. With the Android devices, that's what we're doing. We're actually modifying the device slightly with software to increase the performance. And there are a lot of open source applications or open source programs that you can put on these small devices to enhance their capabilities.
So I want to stop you really quick, because when you say open source, where's the support?
The open source is primarily supported by a community.
Okay.
So you'll get like-minded individuals that decided they want to help to modify or want to help to upgrade a particular type of product. If it wasn't for open source, Google phone or Google devices wouldn't be where they are today. And the fact that Google was one of the first companies that decides to stand up and say, you know what, we want to make a device, being a cell phone, but we don't have all of the programmers and all of the developers that can do it. I'm going to give you the source code, and whatever you add to it, just upload it to us so that we can review it. And we'll make that same source available for other people to look further into. The open source model is more or less your mom and your dad showing you what to do.
Okay.
And then you taking that experience from them and applying it to your own life, to your kids, or to the next generation.
So as a follow-up question, with open source, with Android, is there a legal aspect that we should be concerned about? Because if we're modifying, if we're enhancing that experience, is there anything that we should be concerned about?
There's always concern. There's always been concern, even with Apple devices. If you notice that a few years ago, a year or so ago, Apple, there was and I don't want to give the people too much credit for it.
Okay.
There was a situation where the industry was more or less attacking Apple,
right,
because of the security functionality in their mobile devices. They basically, feds or the federal government basically wanted Apple to unlock or open up a device,
right,
to make information on the device available.
Right.
And Apple, for a while, refused to do it. But you know what the government's answer to that was? Let's put out $1 million bounty on the first person that can actually, in a proven concept, unlock or open up a device. So the government went, once again, to the people, not directly to Apple, but to the people, and said, we're going to pay you if you're able to open up this device for us. So the community effort went into that.
Tell me where you think OTT or streaming streaming media, cord cutting is going to be in the next 18 to 36 months.
It's going to, actually, I personally feel it's going to double, if not triple, in the number of people that are going more toward this particular route. And I say that's going to happen only because we are, once again, a mobile society. We don't want to be tied down to the 9 to 5. We don't want to be tied down to the 9 to 5 of having to be home at a particular time to watch a show. So we are using Hulu, we are using Netflix, we are using Amazon. We are selecting our audio and our entertainment on our own times and on our own terms. And it is just going to explode with we have more and more of the big timers falling into the fold. Like, once again, everybody has an app. I mean, even you're a Verizon subscriber and you have a tablet.
Yes.
Call Verizon up and say, how do I watch the same shows that I'm watching at home
Right.
when I'm out in the backyard?
Gotcha.
Without the cable box, without the hardware. Oh, they'll download the app, plug in your ID, plug in your password, and the same shows that you have available in the house, you can now have at the backyard barbecue.
They're on the go. They're on the go. Michael, I want to thank you so much for coming in today and joining us and being that expert, being that guru that we expected you to be. I think you outdid yourself.
No, Ted, it's always my pleasure to come in and talk to you. You know that.
Hey, so before we close out, what's the best ways for any of our listeners, 1240 WGBB, if they want to get in contact with you, if they want to ask you a question about cutting the cord, streaming TV, all the above, broadband related questions, how should they get in contact with you?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, but I can't have you spread this around to too many people.
Okay.
Hit me up personally on my email, BlancoMichael0 @gmail. Blanco, BlancoMichael, the number 0 @gmail.com. I try to respond as quickly as possible and get as much information out as I can. And if necessary, I'll provide some links to individuals that would require additional support.
Gotcha. Hey, before we close out, this Wednesday coming up on the podcast, we have Miss Diane Reeves. She's the author of Standing Strong. Really thankful for her to be coming on. She has a story that's going to impact your life. She's going to tell us because she was in a relationship with someone, believe it or not, for 4.5 years and became HIV positive. And only to find out that her loved one had infected several women with the HIV